turn. Oh, things are all wobbly here. Okay, how's it going? Welcome to the last Little House Live of 2020. Day 15, Chapter 7 of Farmer Boy. Now let's just have a look and see how long. Okay, it's a short one, so we're going to do Saturday and Sunday. Okay? Sorry, my hand's really hurting right now. It's been bugging me. It's right here. This is where my rheumatoid arthritis is starting. It's in this part of my hands. Hey, hey, hey. All right. So, as we know, until he enters her life, there really isn't any mention of Almanzo in her autobiography, except what I know online is that there were there were actually 6 kids instead of 4. Now, I'm going to turn the light on. I brought a special lamp here so that it doesn't shine on the camera or on the phone, but I can read. Okay? Farmer Boy by Laura Ingalls Wilder. Chapter 7, Saturday Night. That night was Saturday night. All day long, Mother had been baking, and when Almanzo went into the kitchen for the milk pans, she was still frying donuts. The place was full of their hot brown smell, and the weedy smell of new bread, the spicy smell of cakes, and the syrupy smell of pies. "Don't open the crock pot, Howard." Almanzo took the biggest donut from the pan and bit off its crisp end. Mother was rolling out the golden dough, slashing it into long strips. Pointed tips hung down. There's a page missing. Oh, no, I didn't turn the page. I'm sorry. Okay, let's redo that sentence. Mother was rolling out the golden dough, slashing it into long strips, rolling and doubling and twisting the strips. Her fingers flew. You could hardly see them. The strips seemed to twist themselves under her hands and leap into the big copper kettle of swirling hot fat. Plump they went to the bottom, sending up bubbles. Then quickly they came popping up to float and slowly swell, till they rolled themselves over, their pale golden backs going into the fat and their plump brown bellies rising out of it. They rolled over, Mother said, because they were twisted. Some women made newfangled shape, round with a hole in the middle, but round donuts wouldn't turn themselves over. Mother didn't have time to waste turning donuts. It was quicker to twist them. Almanzo liked baking day, but he didn't like Saturday night. On Saturday night, there was no cozy evening by the heater with apples, popcorn, and cider. Saturday night was bath night. After supper, Almanzo and Royal again put on their coats and caps and mufflers and mittens. They carried a tub from the wash tub outdoors to the rain barrel. Everything was ghostly with snow. The stars were frosty in the sky, and only a little faint light came from the candle in the kitchen. The inside of the rain barrel was coated with thick ice, and in the center, where the ice was chopped every day to keep the barrel from bursting, the hole had grown smaller and smaller. Royal chopped at it, and when his hatchet went through with an oozy thud, the water welled up quickly because the ice was squeezing it from all sides. It's odd that water swells when it freezes. Everything else gets smaller in the cold. Almanzo began dipping water and floating pieces of ice into the wash tub. It was cold, slow work dipping through the small hole, and he had an idea. Long icicles hung from the kitchen eaves. At the top, they were a solid piece of ice. Then their pointed tips hung down almost to the snow. Almanzo took hold of one and jerked it, but only the tip broke off. The hatchet had frozen to the porch floor where Royal had laid it, but Almanzo tugged it loose. He lifted it up in both hands and hit the icicles. An avalanche of ice came down with a splintering crash. It was a glorious noise. "Hi, gimme," said Royal. But Almanzo hit the icicles again. The noise was louder than before. "You're bigger than I be. You hit 'em with your fists," Almanzo said. So Royal hit the icicles with both his fists. Almanzo hit them again with the hatchet. The noise was immense. Almanzo yelled and Royal yelled, and they hit more and more icicles. Big pieces of ice were flying all over the porch floor, and flying pieces pitted the snow. Along the eaves, there was a gap as though the roof had lost some teeth. Mother flung open the kitchen door. "Mercy on us," she cried. "Royal! Almanzo, be you hurt?" "No, Mother," Almanzo said meekly. "What is it? What be you doing?" Almanzo felt guilty, but they had really not been playing while they had to work. "Getting ice for the bath water, Mother," he said. "Sorry about that, folks. I'm not sure where it buffered, so I'm going to go back to... What is it? What be you doing?" Almanzo felt guilty, but they had not really been playing when they had work to do. "Getting ice for the bath water, Mother," he said. "My land! Such a racket I never heard. Must you yell like Comanches?" "No, Mother," said Almanzo. Mother's teeth chattered in the cold, and she shut the door. Almanzo and Royal silently picked up the fallen icicles and silently filled the tub. It was so heavy they staggered when they carried it, and Father had to lift it onto the kitchen stove. The ice melted while Almanzo greased his moccasins and Royal greased his boots. In the pantry, Mother was filling the 6-quart pan with boiled beans, putting in onions and peppers and the piece of fat pork, and pouring scrolls of molasses all over. Then Almanzo saw her open the flour barrels. She flung rye flour and cornmeal into the big yellow crock, and stirred in milk and eggs and things, and poured the big baking pan full of the yellow-gray rye Injun dough. "You fetch the rye Injun, Almanzo. Don't spill it," she said. She snatched up the pan of beans, and Almanzo followed more slowly with the heavy pan of rye Injun. Father opened the big doors of the oven in the heater, and Mother slid the beans and bread inside. They would slowly bake there till Sunday dinner time. Then Almanzo was left alone in the kitchen to take his bath. His clean underwear was hanging on a chair back to air and warm. The washcloth and towel and the small wooden pannikin of soft soap were on another chair. He brought another wash tub from the woodshed and put it on the floor in front of the open oven door. He took off his waist and one pair of socks and pants. Then he dipped some warm water from the tub I'm sorry, folks, Howie's chopping kindling and it's distracting me. Then he dipped some warm water from the tub on the stove into the tub on the floor. He took off his other pair of socks and his underwear, and his bare skin felt good in the heat from the oven. He toasted in the heat, and he thought he might just put on his clean underwear and not take a bath at all. But Mother would look when he went into the dining room. So he stepped into the water, covered his feet. With his fingers, he dug some of the brown, slimy, soft soap from the pannikin and smeared it on the washcloth. Then he scrubbed himself well all over. The water was warm around his toes, but it felt cold on his body, and his belly steamed in the heat from the oven, but his wet back shivered. When he turned around, his back seemed to blister, but his front was very cold. So he washed as quickly as he could, and he dried himself and got into his warm underwaist and his woolly long drawers, and he put on his long woolen nightshirt. They dressed really well for bed. Then he remembered his ears. He took the washcloth again and scrubbed his ears and the back of his neck, and he put on his nightcap. He felt very clean and good, and his skin felt sleek in the fresh, warm clothes. It was a Saturday night feeling. It was pleasant, but Almanzo didn't like it well enough to take a bath for it. If he could have had his way, he wouldn't have taken a bath till spring. Remind me to talk to you about that. He did not have to empty his tub, because if he went outdoors after taking a bath, he would catch cold. Alice would empty the tub and wash it before she bathed in it. And then Eliza Jane would empty Alice's, and Royal would empty Eliza Jane's, and Mother would empty Royal's. Late at night, Father would empty Mother's and take his bath. And next morning, he would empty the tub for the last time. Almanzo went into the dining room in his clean, creamy white underwear and socks, nightshirt and cap. Mother looked at him, and he went to her to be inspected. She laid down her knitting, and she looked at his ears and the back of his neck, and she looked at his soapy, clean face, and she gave him a hug and a squeeze. There, run along with you to bed. He lighted a candle, and he padded quickly up the cold stairs and blew out the candle and jumped into the soft, cold feather bed. He began to say his prayers, but went to sleep before he finished them. You know, folks, it wasn't that long ago when people would literally sew themselves into their winter underwear for the winter. That's why they had drop seats. They would literally sew themselves in. Most people back then did not bathe in the wintertime. Like, they would wash their face and hands and comb their hair and stuff, but they did not get into a fully immersion. Actually, Almanzo's family was really up and coming in a lot of ways. Because if you think about this, Almanzo's 9 years old, and everybody thought he was 21. When he was a homesteader, he was actually only 19. And so when he was 19, Laura was like 13 or 14. So he's like 5-6 years older than her. So if he's 9, she's still back in the little house in the big woods, right? And people didn't, in the winter, her family, if you notice, they are a very well-to-do family. Well, some people knew how important sanitation was, and some people I'm getting a headache. But what I'm saying is, a lot of times people didn't bathe all winter long, right? It was, but Saturday night was bath night, but usually only in the spring, summer, and fall. So let's get on to Sunday, and then I'm going to go dish up supper and bake some scones off for dessert. Sunday. When Almanzo trudged into the kitchen the next morning with 2 brimming milk pails, Mother was making stacked pancakes because this was Sunday. The big blue platter on the stove's hearth was full of plump sausage cakes. Eliza Jane was cutting apple pies, and Alice was dishing up. And by the way, apple pies back then weren't like apple pies today. They aren't loaded with sugar. When they made pies for breakfast, 9 times out of 10, it was basically just fruit and raisins and stuff. There wasn't a whole lot of sugar in it. Eliza Jane was cutting apple pies, and Alice was dishing up oatmeal as usual. But the little blue platter stood hot on the back of the stove, and 10 stacks of pancakes rose in tall towers on it. 10 pancakes cooked on the smoking griddle. And as fast as they were done, Mother added another cake to each stack and buttered it lavishly and covered it with maple sugar. Butter and sugar melted together and soaked the fluffy pancakes and dripped all down their crispy edges. And I've done it, and it's bloody delicious. Maybe I'll do it in a video. Mother kept on frying them till the others had eaten their oatmeal. She could never make too many stacked pancakes. They all ate pile after pile of them, and Almanza was still eating when Mother pushed back her chair and said, "Mercy on us, 8 o'clock. I must fly." Mother always flew. Her feet went pattering. Her hands moved so fast she could hardly watch them. She never sat down in the daytime except at her spinning wheel or loom. And then her hands flew. Her feet tapped, and the spinning wheel was a blur, or the loom was clattering thump, thud, clickety-clack. But on Sunday, hurried and brushed the sleek brown driving horses till they shone. Almanzo dusted the sleigh, and Royal wiped the silver-mounted harness. They hitched up the horses, and then they went to the house to put on their Sunday clothes. Mother was in the pantry setting the top crust on the Sunday chicken pie. 3 fat hens were in the pie under the bubbling gravy. Mother spread the crust and crimped the edges, and the gravy showed through the 2 pine trees she had cut in the dough. She put the pie in the heating stove's oven with the beans and the rye Injun bread. Father filled the stove with hickory logs and closed the dampers, while Mother flew to lay out his clothes and dress herself. Poor people had to wear homespun on Sundays. Royal and Almanzo wore full cloth. But Father and Mother and the girls were very fine in clothes that Mother had made of store-bought cloth woven by machines. She had made Father's suit of fine black broadcloth. The coat had a velvet collar, and his shirt was made of French calico. His stock was black silk, and on Sundays he did not wear boots. He wore shoes of thin calfskin. Mother was dressed in brown merino, with a white lace collar and white lace frills at her wrists and under the big bell-shaped sleeves. She had knitted the lace of finest thread, and it was like cobwebs. There were rows of brown velvet on her sleeves, and down the front of her basque she had made her bonnet, and she had made her bonnet of the same brown velvet with the brown velvet strings tied under her chin. Almanza was proud of Mother in her fine Sunday clothes. The girls were very fine too, but they did not feel the same about them. But he did not feel the same about them. Their hoop skirts were so big that Royal and Almanzo could hardly get into the sleigh. They had to scrooge down and let those hoops bulge over their knees. And if they even moved, Eliza Jane would cry out, "Be careful, clumsy!" And Alice would mourn, "Oh dear, my ribbons are mussed." But when they were all tucked under buffalo skin robes with hot bricks at their feet, Father let the prancing horses go, and Almanzo forgot everything else. The sleigh went like the wind. The beautiful horses shone in the sun. Their necks were arched, and their heads were up, and their slender legs spurned the snowy road. They seemed to be flying, their glossy manes and tails blown back with the wind of their speed. Father sat upright and proud, holding the reins and letting the horses go as fast as they would. He never used the whip. His horses were gentle and perfectly trained. He had only to tighten or slacken the reins, and they obeyed him. His horses were the best horses in New York State, or maybe in the whole world. Malone was 5 miles away, but Father never stirred until 30 minutes before church time. That team would trot the whole 5 miles, and he would stable them and blanket them and be on the church steps when the bell rang. When Almanzo thought that it would be years and years before he could hold the reins and drive horses like that, he could hardly bear it. In no time at all, Father was driving into the church sheds in Malone. The sheds were one long low building, all around the 4 sides of a square. You drove into the square, Can you all see that? There's the church, and there's the sheds. You drove into the square through a gate. Every man who belonged to the church paid rent for a shed, according to his means, and Father had the best one. It was so large that he drove it inside to unhitch, and there was a manger with feed boxes and space for hay and oats. Father let Almanzo help put the blankets on the horses, while Mother and the girls shook out their skirts and smoothed their ribbons. Then they all walked sedately into the church. The first clang of the bell rang out when they were on the steps. After that, there was nothing to do but sit still till the sermon was over. It was 2 hours long. Almanzo's legs ached and his jaw wanted to yawn, but he dared not yawn or fidget. He must sit perfectly still and never take his eyes from the preacher's solemn face and wagging beard. Almanzo couldn't understand how Father knew that he wasn't looking at the preacher, if Father was looking at the preacher himself. But Father always did know. At last it was over. In the sunshine outside the church, Almanzo felt better. Boys must not run or laugh or talk loudly on Sunday, but they could talk quietly, and Almanzo's cousin Frank was there. Frank's father was Uncle Wesley. He owned the potato starch mill and lived in town. He did not have a farm. So Frank was only a town boy, and he played with town boys. But this Sunday morning, he was wearing a store-bought cap. It was made of plaid cloth, machine woven, and it had ear flaps that buttoned under the chin. Frank unbuttoned them and showed Almanzo that they would turn up and button across the cap's top. He said the cap came from New York City. His father had bought it in Mr. Case's store. Almanzo had never seen a cap like that. He wanted one. Royal said it was a silly cap. He said to Frank, "What's the sense of ear flaps that button over the top? Nobody has ears on top of his head." So Almanzo knew that Royal wanted a cap like that too. "How much did it cost?" Almanzo asked. 50 cents, Frank said proudly. Almanzo knew he could not have one. The caps that Mother made were snug and warm, and it would be a foolish waste of money to buy a cap. 50 cents was a lot of money. "You just ought to see our horses," he said to Frank. "Huh, they're not your horses," Frank said. "They're your father's horses. You haven't got a horse or even a colt." "I'm going to have a colt," said Almanzo. "When?" asked Frank. Just then Eliza Jane called over her shoulder, "Come, Almanzo, Father's hitching up." He hurried away after Eliza Jane, but Frank called after him low, "You are not either going to have a colt." Almanzo got soberly into the sleigh. He wondered if he would ever be big enough to have anything he wanted. When he was younger, Father sometimes let him hold the ends of the reins while Father drove, but he was not a baby now. He wanted to drive the horses himself. Father allowed him to brush and currycomb and rub down the gentle old work horses and to drive them on the harrow, but he could not even go into the stalls with the spirited driving horses or the colts. He hardly dare ever stroke their soft noses through the bars and scratch a little on their foreheads under the forelocks. Father said, "You boys keep away from those colts. In 5 minutes you can teach them tricks it'll take me months to gentle out of them." He felt a little better when he sat down to the good Sunday dinner. Mother sliced the hot rye Injun bread on the breadboard by her plate, and Father's spoon cut deep into the chicken pie. He scooped out big pieces of thick crust and turned up their fluffy yellow undersides on the plate. He poured gravy over them. He dipped up big pieces of tender chicken, dark meat and white meat sliding from the bones. He added a mound of baked beans and topped it with a quivering slice of fat pork. At the end of the plate, he piled dark red beet pickles, and he handed the plate to Almanzo. Silently, Almanzo ate it all. Then he ate a piece of pumpkin pie, and he felt very full inside. But he ate a piece of apple pie with cheese. After dinner, Eliza Jane and Alice did the dishes, but Father and Mother and Royal and Almanzo did nothing at all. The whole afternoon they sat in the drowsy, warm dining room. Mother read the Bible, and Eliza Jane read a book. Father's head nodded till he woke with a jerk and then began to nod again. Royal fingered the wooden chain he could not whittle, and Alice looked for a long time out the window. But Almanzo just sat. He had to. He was not allowed to do anything else, for Sunday was not a day for working or playing. It was a day for going to church and for sitting still. Almanzo was glad when it was time to do chores. Thank you for joining me in the last Little House Live of 2020. Now, this is the drill. Hey everybody! Hi, Tony DeLuca. How's it going? I don't remember Ma wearing any either. It must be a rich thing. Well, the thing is these, Almanzo's folks are like the same age, or a little bit older actually than Ma and Pa Ingalls. A little bit older than Ma and Pa Ingalls. And they had a successful farm because they stayed there and they made it successful. And they worked bloody hard and they made sure their kids had a work ethic. But you think about the meals that they put out. Like she was always, making donuts or making cookies or filling the donut jars. She was always weaving, or she was always, spinning or sewing or knitting. He said Mother never sat unless she was at the loom or the spinning wheel, except on Sundays. But I think back to, Little House in the Big Woods, and think about this. They ate meals like at the sugaring off dance. Almanzo's family ate like that every single day. Never once did you see his father or the entire family sit down to nothing but cornmeal mush. You know what I mean? And chicken gravy or anything like that. How many times did they sit down to bread and cranberry jelly or bread and pumpkin? Almanzo's family ate like royalty. And when you hear him talk about the horses and that his dad had the biggest shed in Malone and all those things, you knew that Royal came from wealth, right? So, anyway, hi, Tony. How are you? The cookies look fantastic. Oh, they did look good. They did look good. Well, listen, folks, I don't want to stay and talk too much because it's the holidays and Nana's here, and I have to go serve up dinner and bake scones. I've already got them made. They're freezing, and you'll get the video tomorrow on our half-acre homestead. So until now, we are going to go on the 20th, the 21st, the 22nd, and the 23rd. I will be reading live 4 p.m. every day for those 4 days. Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol. All right. Take care. God bless. And we'll pick this up on day 16 after the holidays. All right. This is the Mrs. Volpe from our half-acre homestead from Reading with Beverly Volpe saying we'll see you on the 20th. Take care. God bless.